Welcome to the Motoring Podcast, your weekly discussion of motoring news. This is episode 585 on Tuesday, the 2nd of July, 2024. Hello, I'm Alan.
Hello, I'm Andrew. And this week we'll be seeing how a company has decided fighting with one government just isn't enough. In new car news, we see the effect of the zero-emission vehicle mandate is having. And in points of interest, we share a video that should cause car lovers to be scared about the future. But first, we have a tiny bit of a follow-up. We thought this was done and dusted, to be honest, but when we've read into it again, we realised that it wasn't. ARAMCO has apparently, virtually now, agreed that it will take a 10% stake in the Renault-Geely joint venture called Horse.
Stupid name.
It is a ridiculous name. But why we got confused is because back in March 2023, when we first covered this story, they agreed in the form of signing a letter of intent with a view to possibly becoming a minority shareholder in the joint venture. But they are apparently going to take a 10% stake, and this will mean that the Horse powertrain will be apparently worth, all the apparentlys here and all allegedlys,
Small drum roll in the run-up to this.
7.4 billion euros. Well, okay. Don't know how something that is nothing can be worth an awful lot.
Yes, but that's why we're not in finance, Andrew.
We don't just make stuff up, you mean?
That basically is it, yes. Neither of us is very good at that kind of thing.
No. Okay, shall we move on to new news then?
Yes, let's, I think. Volkswagen. Hey! We all love a Volkswagen story. But Volkswagen, in this case, they're not being fined any money. They have decided to invest $1 billion, everybody, pinkies to the sides of your mouths, into EV startup Rivian. Rivianism, not really much of a footprint in the UK. Here in the US, they have supplied many, but not as many as originally intended because Amazon decided not to order as many vans for Amazon, which you see a lot around here, as well as pickup trucks and an SUV, which again, you see quite a few of around here. Such as the world of automotive startups. Despite that, and despite a good presence and it seems quite happy customers, both commercial and consumer, not doing wonderfully well on the old cash flow front.
No.
Because building and developing cars is hard.
Well, not only that, they've decided to redevelop the car's architecture and software as well.
Yes, we did it one way, it was too complicated, now we're going to simplify it, which is quite a common way to do stuff based on lessons learned and that kind of stuff.
But it's not cheap.
No, that's costing lots of money. Meanwhile, in Germany, Volkswagen has this subsidiary that's doing software, allegedly.
I think it's spending more time fighting off management, isn't it?
Yeah, basically. I mean, I'm sure they could probably do software perfectly well if they were allowed to do it. But CARIAD has not been a wonderfully successful project for Volkswagen Group, and I'm grossly understating what a disaster it's actually been. As a result, Volkswagen Group have decided to invest $1 billion into Rivian, because Rivian's software is recognized to be particularly good.
Well, it's certainly better than CARIAD.
Yes, but Fisker was probably better than CARIAD, given the reputation that CARIAD has. I was afraid to even worse, do you think? Okay.
Absolutely. They've just done their third recall this month, or in June they did their third recall.
On the other hand, isn't it impressive that they're doing recalls?
Oh.
I know that there's not much choice in the matter, but isn't it impressive that they're doing it, not just going, how it did, lying on the back, legs in the air like a little bug. They've agreed to team up with Volkswagen, giving Rivian money, Rivian in kind of return, giving Volkswagen software, and lo, that is good. Where that ends up with questions is not just about, I mean, we can talk about EV startups, I think, from now until sometime this evening without pause. And the challenges and the silliness that happens because tech startup, as opposed to product and engineering startup, and the sort of what seems to be the way that people think in these situations. And if you want a really good documentary on that, I can recommend Silicon Valley.
Does feel like it many times. in the car
Tell me
industry
that's
anyway.
not completely ridiculous. Well, it is, but also not. The question there was what happens to Scout Motors, which was Volkswagen's US-based / focused EV startup, which one of the first products that it was going to come out with was an electric pickup truck.
Yep.
Which, by the way, just reminder for those of you outside of North America, if you want an electric pickup truck here, you've got a choice of 4. You have the Tesla cluster truck, surely the worst built vehicle in the world. You have the Ford F-150 Lightning, which is better built, but not as showy-offy. You have the Rivian R1T, which is kind of soft, really good off-road, all these kind of things, actually really popular. And the last option you have is, because none of the rest of them are big enough or heavy enough, you have the General Motors Hummer pickup truck.
I thought they were about... I've been reading reviews or seeing headlines of reviews for a GM pickup that's been quite glowing.
Has that actually come out yet?
I don't know whether it's out or whether this is
the new
early.
Silverado is imminent. In fairness, the new Silverado is, I think it's just Silverado EV. It is on the edges of being launched. So there's going to be 5 options here. Yeah. And then Scout would be on top of that, and anything else that anyone else invents. But the Japanese companies are having enough trouble with EV cars, let alone pickup trucks.
Absolutely.
They're not rushing into that particular market just yet.
Volkswagen also want to get their hands on Rivian's battery tech, as well as the software, because there's lots of talk about the software stack in the articles covering this, which is so tedious. And
so old-fashioned. Nobody talks about software stacks.
Well,
you'll talk about technology stacks, and there's a difference. Sorry.
They're talking about... It is all about... And then they go on about software-defined vehicles and all the joys that brings. My heart.
Sorry. You can talk, just as a quick aside, from someone who deals with enterprise and IT architecture every day. That kind of stuff. Just to be aware, companies cannot get simple office programs to work in the way that people are talking about. I do not believe they can get vehicles to work in that way if they can't do the first one.
Nope.
Lots and lots of talk, lots and lots of ideas, most of which will be dead in the water. They might still be called that because this is a common tactic in IT folk. You keep on calling something the same thing whilst making it nothing like what it originally was.
Well, invariably, the car companies are bringing in people from consumer tech side of things who have no clue about safety critical systems. They have no clue about security, really. And
but they've got a wonderful operating system for an oven, Andrew.
Yeah. And it's just, well, we go back to when we were talking about security last week or the week before. It's just absolutely petrifying seeing what's being done. There will be extra links in the show notes. So first of all, we'll have the TechCrunch article here that will give you the story behind the Volkswagen investment.
TechCrunch, by the way, way better than most in this sphere because they have a dedicated automotive tech editor and correspondent who focuses on the automotive stuff, and that's really, really good.
Yeah, it's better than most. I'm not fully 100% behind everything
it's not
they
the
say.
Best, but it's not 100%, but it's way better than most because there is someone who knows the tech and knows cars at the same time.
Yeah. There will be a link to a thread from Christian Hertzner, who chatted to me actually online about what this will probably mean to CARIAD, which was interesting because I didn't realize initially that they wanted to lift the software side of Rivian and take that, which is why we discussed the implications for CARIAD. But there will also be an article from Auto Evolution that frankly makes me worried about the whole thing because it goes into what the aims Rivian has and also disappointingly tries to say that they're being like Tesla as though that's a good thing. And it's not a good thing.
It's the worst thing to be. I mean, you terrible GT people.
Yeah, they also go on to, but this emphasizes which I think is what you're about to say, but this emphasizes how bad the reporting has been and continues to be about software, autonomous vehicles, and that side of things, because what this goes to describe about the always improving data loop for using end-to-end AI is just absolute 100% garbage. But it does at least give an education of what they're aiming for, and I think they are trying to spread themselves far too thin. Just focus on your cars and your vans and your battery. Do that, get that right.
One other thing they are doing is the charging network, and I know that's a bit late, but over here, as opposed to Europe, where there are chargers and networks, especially in the UK, which is really pretty good and tends to be where you want it to be, here, that has not gotten done yet. So stuff like supermarkets have not got the idea that you could have chargers in the car park.
Yeah.
Or malls do to an extent, but people need the hand-holding in order to adopt. It's actually quite an important part of any offering.
Yep. Okay, well, I'm going to move us on, and I'm going to take us to Luton and Ellesmere Port.
It's not very far away.
Nope. Last week, the CEO of Stellantis decided that she would be the one that was going to voice Stellantis' regular threatening of the UK government on do what we want or we shut down the factories, even though we've just invested many millions of pounds, and we were all proud to say it's been open in Ellesmere Port for how many years?
And happy to say how wonderful it was and everything else. Frankly, sort out your messaging.
Yes, be consistent.
Is first one. And secondly, this is really boring. You do this every 6 months.
Yeah.
The flip side being, we don't know when you're crying wolf or not. You're just trying to get something.
Yeah.
And it's just really tedious. Grow up.
I totally agree with you. But from a business point of view, I understand that they have, in the last several years, these car companies have found a way to get money from the UK government, which is to be very publicly loud and threaten that they would shut their factories and lose a lot of people their jobs. And the governments have caved and invested and whatever they've needed to do so they can go, oh, look, we are for you people and the business and everything. I don't know whether that tactic is going to work with the next government, whoever it may be. But I would say that because Stellantis are saying the UK government needs to do more to encourage private buyers and to encourage businesses to buy electric vans.
They need to do more to do the things that mean that people buy Stellantis products. That is actually what it boils down to.
Yes. They are saying, though, that because the government has mandated that a certain percentage each year of sales or registrations must be electric or zero emission, then the government should be doing more to help this. However, if we're talking about the vans, I would say, and this goes to not just Stellantis, but all the electric van makers, get a product that actually works for the vast majority of the industry and how that works and how it is used and everything like that, and make it at an affordable price where people can buy them, and then that will fix a lot of your problems.
I saw a picture somewhere where it was this very reasonable monthly rate for a van, but it was £10,000 down. And I was just like, yeah, because small companies, these small builders and stuff, they're definitely going to just drop £10,000 straight up.
Or 6,000 mile. Another one I've seen is 6,000 miles per year maximum.
Yeah, you see, that doesn't really work.
No. So that because
people, especially not anywhere vaguely. The weird thing is the places that people live where they can charge them and stuff tend to be rural, and that tends to be the places where people are going to drive the longer distances.
Yeah. On the van side, the industry needs to start making a product that works for what the end buyers' needs are, or the vast majority of them. And on the private side of things, again, considering all the things that this country needs addressing, it's a very hard sell to say, here you go, wealthy person. We're going to give you some money off your next purchase of this big shiny thing that can sit on your drive and look all nice and clean. That's a very hard sell at the moment.
Yes, yeah, it is. Hospitals and roads.
Yeah, exactly. But equally, I do understand a certain amount of frustration from the industry where they are given these this ridiculous limited input on the rules and told just get on with it.
Someone somewhere in Downing Street made up a thing. Someone else went, oh, that sounds like a good way to get votes. And then the thing was implemented without any understanding as to whether it should be implemented or whether it could be implemented.
Yeah.
But anyway, shall we move on? Because we are getting very grumpy today. And the more grumpy we are right now, the more you have to cut later when you're less grumpy. Or you listen to just how grumpy we've been. Next up, Renault UK has a new, it has a new MD, and it has a new MD because the existing MD, Guillaume Sicard, has been summoned back to France. He's going from managing director of Renault UK to be vice president of the Renault brand for the French market area. That sounds like a promotion to me.
Okay.
The new MD will be Adam Wood. He'll take over very soon, and he'll be the country manager for the Renault Group, which includes Dacia and Alpine as well.
Yes. Moving on to the next story, though, because that neatly slides into it.
There's a new boss at Peugeot UK.
Yes. Funnily enough, an opening has happened at Peugeot UK.
Who is it that's moved, and where have they moved to?
I believe it's a gentleman called Adam Wood, and he's gone to somewhere called Renault UK.
Oh, right. Okay. Yes. I think I heard a story about that recently.
Yes, Adam Wood is going to be replaced by Ulrich Druss, who has worked within Stellantis since 2001, where he started his career with Peugeot as a trainee, according to this AM Online article.
I liked his line. He said, the Peugeot continues to go from strength to strength, and that sounds very similar to a 1980s tagline.
Yes.
You might as well have just said the line goes from strength to strength and then struck up Berlin in the background or something.
Yeah. But to be fair, okay, those two companies there, to be fair to them, they are both seemingly bringing out some really interesting cars at the moment. And much as we're mocking the whole designs are looking quite similar in certain ones.
And the people are looking.
Yeah, and there's a lot of intermingling of staff moving from offices. But the Peugeot stuff looks good. Really like Peugeot interiors. Renault stuff is looking really interesting. They've got the 5 about to come out. The Alpine has got some good stuff that's in the pipeline. Dacia's got some really interesting cars now and about to descend on us.
The thing is, there's actually, I know that on one hand you've got it's an electric SUV, blah, 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 which I absolutely sympathise with, because some weeks when we look at new car news, it's like, oh my goodness me, it's mid-size electric SUVs. But the thing is that amongst those, and including some of them, there are some really interesting, good-looking, good cars coming out.
Yeah, if you take away the SUV-ness of them.
Yeah.
If you just gloss over that and go...
If you gloss over the fact they're all jacked up a bit so that they can house a battery pack of whatever size.
Yeah, that's the reality, and I think we'll come on to an article later on where we're going to go into that in depth. But yeah, there are very interesting interiors being done. Peugeot, we mentioned there. There's interesting looks. Again, Peugeot and Renault. Renault have seemingly shed what has been a bit bland, to be fair, for them in the last few years.
But the Renault do that. They go through a bland phase, and then they go through a, hey guys, we've found all the, we've found all the smokes. and then they go through another bland phase. You either get tofu or chili from Renault.
Yeah. And their cars are winning awards, both brands.
Well, they are sponsoring a lot of things.
It's going to be, I think it's an interesting time to be the MD of either of these. I think you've at least got something to flog relatively easily, forgetting the financial situation. But I mean, as an attractive product.
Anyway, back down to the ground with a thump. Private car parks, because that's the kind of thrilling thing we talk about on here. Private car parks in the UK are to offer motorists a 10-minute grace period before they impose a charge for overstaying. This is part of a new code of practice that parking companies have written themselves under the guise of the British Parking Association and the International Parking Community. Must be good, it's a community.
That sounds so cuddly, doesn't it?
Yes, which are the two trade bodies representing the heavies that run car parks. Motoring organisations say that this code falls short of the standards required to protect innocent and inverted commas drivers from the... This is a BBC article. And I'm quoting this. Sharks running private car parks. And government legislation is required. Yeah, well, government legislation is required on so many things at the minute. I think this one went quite far down the list.
They did come out. The government came out with stuff that was going to the people that the motoring organisations said, yeah, that's pretty good. We'd obviously want more, but that's pretty good. And then the government just backtracked on it all.
Of course it did.
Now the Code of Practice has come out as clearly a very transparent, desperate hope that the next government is too busy with other things, which, to be fair, they probably will be. That they go, oh, well, they've put their own thing in place, so we can just leave them alone.
Yes.
Because self-governing has worked so well in this country, hasn't it?
Yeah. Anyway, it's meant to be introduced, or some of it is meant to be introduced in October. The rest of it has until sometime late in 2026, and everybody's forgotten about it, to be fully implemented.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to move to the last story.
Oh, it's another opportunity to get grumpy.
Of the first part of the show. And I thought this was an interesting report that came out from some academics, and we're linking to a University of Oxford post about it. And it's talking about how the size and weight of new cars, particularly electric cars, is actually causing a problem. Now, we've all talked about it, particularly when we get into some of the new cars the new car news that we're going to be talking about in the second part. One of them in particular, all the talk was about how heavy it is. And that isn't even a fully electric vehicle. They talk about how they call it mobesity, which is larger and heavier vehicles.
Quite a good word. I like that word.
But they then go on to just talk about SUVs being the main problem of this. I think it's shown, before you get too cross, I think it's shown that they've not fully grasped the situation.
No.
As you were saying before, when we were talking about the Peugeot and Renault and SUVs there, one of the reasons there are so many SUVs is the battery packs need to go somewhere. Yeah. They do acknowledge that this is part of an issue because they've got some recommendations at the bottom.
The SUV-ness is a symptom.
Yes.
It is not the cause. The cause is you've got to all have electric cars. And electric cars need batteries. So you put the batteries into it. And the batteries are heavy. By their very nature, batteries are heavy. And by going, to save the climate, you must put big, heavy things into vehicles. And you could sometimes put small, heavy things into vehicles if you've got a hybrid. But it's a heavy thing in a vehicle.
They do acknowledge that.
The SUV is the fact that to package it, you have to lift everything else up. So it's not that everybody wants to be building SUVs, people. It's that they've got no ruddy choice.
Though they do, because of the profits.
Yeah, but...
The problem is, talking about SUVs, it is actually a nuanced issue. It's nuanced from the start, but the problem is, so many people have just gone SUV bad.
But a Duke is not the same as a Hummer.
No, but equally, a Duke is not the same as a Nissan Note either. It is a larger vehicle trying to do the same thing, but just be raised up. I agree with you generally, but
really pees me off.
It is nuanced. They do acknowledge it if you read through the article that is linked.
I'm trying to move on from being a grumpy sod.
And wait a minute, because they have some recommendations on how this can be got around, and they combine. There needs to be policy changes. There's technological innovation required and consumer behavior. But it also will require the OEMs themselves to find a vehicle in which they can make the same amount of profit that they are making with SUVs.
The challenge with that one, by the way, the hardest part of all of that is consumer behavior. Because the trouble is that if we've seen this, Mazda has done it, Honda has done it, they've actually provided vehicles that cover 90% of what most people ever drive. And what's happened is everyone's gone, oh my goodness, I can't possibly have a 110-mile range in my Honda E or my Mazda RX-30. It's the right one, isn't it?
I think so.
And that's not nearly enough for me. And so they don't buy it. So as a result, whilst even the car companies know that that's actually all anybody needs, they can't change the consumer behavior, so they have to end up, in order to make any money at all, selling something that people are going to buy.
Yes and no. Yes, I agree with you, because we have ourselves 7.5 years ago, nearly 8 years ago, went with a vehicle that most people would not today consider anything on their list worth buying because of the apparent low range.
Yes.
When we went round charging around Britain. However, when you say that 110 miles, the problem you're gonna have to work not only on the look. You usually don't do more than 20 miles or 50 miles or 60 miles in a week or 100 miles in a week. This should be good for you. You have to get over the ability to go somewhere, but also the same price with an ICE and what range they get there. They perceive they are not getting the same thing for the same money.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I say, it's very nuanced. There's so many layers to this. I think it's interesting that you should actually read it and see what's being said. I don't agree with all the things they're suggesting on how they're suggesting it. I think some of it's quite naive. I think some of it's not really right. But there does need to be a conversation about all this, because otherwise you get the blanket SUVs are bad. We'll ban all SUVs from towns or from these roads or those roads. And then you start going, well, hang on. It's not like that's not that simple.
I think next week we'll cover London reintroducing the congestion charge on EVs.
Well, that was always coming in.
I know. That's what amused me, was the fact that people seem surprised by it. Never mind. Anyway, So you can tell this is a contentious issue because, quite frankly, and unusually, Andrew is far more tolerant of it than I am. It's one of these ones where what they're saying is it's right but naive, and my annoyance isn't with what's being said, because it's right.
Yeah.
It's with the naivety over which people can think, oh, we'll just do this. And the world is not that way.
Yeah, it's the simplistic response.
That's actually what's peeing me off. It's not actually what they're saying, because they're right. They're right. And what we actually need to do, and the hypocrisy crushes me every time I say something like this, is have smaller vehicles with smaller electric motors, with all these kind of things. We all know this.
We were saying it the other week, weren't we, about the Smart 5, #5.
Yeah, I mean, what the heck's the point? 400? Was it 400 horsepower?
0 to 60 in less than 3 seconds in a car that was going to be 30,000 quid. That is insane.
But yeah, I mean, that's upside down in the ditch. We've seen it ourselves with stuff like the Volvo, what's the electric XC40?
Yeah.
And the fact that you had the dual motor one, but it was fast as anything, but just chewed through batteries, chewed through power like nothing on earth. And you'd much rather, like many other people as well have since said, they'd much rather have the lower powered one, which was more than adequately quick.
Yeah.
And the range. But because of some brands, then this power thing is a big deal.
It's like,
anyway, I'm keeping on waffling when I was trying to stop it,
but
move
it
us
is,
on, and I'm not.
It's very much, there is a lot of teenage boys' wet dreams are being manifested in a lot of the cars, and it must do this, it must do that, and you go, there's no need for it.
Yeah, I don't mind that itself in the right kind of car.
Yeah, there is a time and a place, but in a family SUV, nah,
not really.
Anyway, now we must stop.
2 articles, one from University of Oxford, which is good, and another one kind of covering pretty much the same story by Charlie Martin in Autocar, which also is good and has a bit more. It sort of gives many more examples, I think.
Yeah, it talks about how all cars have gone up in weight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That, you'll be pleased to hear, takes us to Guilt Minute. Quick break in the show where we ask for where we ask for a tad of financial support to keep the lights on and the hosting running. If you feel the Motoring Podcast is worth a small consideration every month, then you can become a patron. Different levels of patron include different levels of commitment from us to you, including being able to watch the show recorded live. We also have a small range of merchandise in our spring store, from stickers to mugs and t-shirts. If you don't have any spare cash, and we do completely understand, then you can help us by following for free from a podcast player to receive every show as they're released, and by liking and rating the show in whatever way your podcast supplier lets you. If you've done all of that, and some of you do, so thank you very much, then the last thing you do is to recommend us to your friends or colleagues.
Thank you, everyone that does. It is very much appreciated.
You rock.
Okay, Alan, let's start new car news with a vehicle that I think even us today, being grumpy that we are, will find it very difficult to get miffed or cross about.
The Hyundai Inster.
Maybe the name.
is You see, whenever you're talking about the weight, it's an Inster-gram.
Ah, very good.
Thank you. Yes, I'll be
here all week. Tip the waiting staff.
It's America. You have to do that, or they spit in your food.
Try the steak.
The Hyundai Inster, it is a 217-mile EV city car, priced, according to Autocar, from £22,000. It is only little, but the curious thing about this is that many things like the spring and stuff, similar competitors, which are coming, tend to be based on very, very pared-down vehicles for developing markets in those cases. This one is based on a Korean market car. I don't know whether that makes it better or worse than maybe one that was originally an Indian market car or similar. But it's a cute-looking little thing.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what it reminds me a little bit of inside profile and stuff is the old Suzuki Ignis.
Yes, I got a lot of vibes of that, yeah.
It's the arches and C-pillar and stuff like that. The front is a bit more, I don't know what it's like. It looks like an Insta, really. It's sort of big lights low down and little lights higher up, and it's kind of cute.
That light with the badge across it, just under the top lip of the bonnet, is like the Kona. It's surprising that there is recognizable design language between Hyundais, because so many of them don't have that. They're one of those few brands that don't sort of take a photocopier and either shrink or enlarge their vehicles.
And I like the square tail lights and stuff like that too. Anyway, and the inside looks nice enough in these pictures. Obviously, it's not a UK market car, so it's very difficult to tell. But it's light-coloured and modern-looking, and it's got a Fabler stuck to the top of the dash and all these kind of things, as you'd expect. But it looks just fine. Price is around £22,000.
Well, there's going to be an entry level, which will get 96 brake horsepower front-mounted drive, which will give 186 miles a maximum range. That's with the 42 kilowatt-hour battery pack. Top speed is limited to 87 mile an hour there, but you shouldn't need 87 miles an hour anyway.
Maybe a little terrifying.
But the long range is the 217-mile one, which has a 49 kilowatt-hour battery pack and 113 brake horsepower. And that will allow you, if your road conditions and legality is permitting, 93 mile an hour.
There's a line here that says it's possible that only the longer range car will be offered here, which seems a bit... I don't see what's wrong with the range of the shorter one, but never mind.
Possibly waiting to see how the Spring does.
That's probably true, yeah.
The immediate competitor to this is the Spring, because it is only a four-seater. It is a small city car, but the Spring's range is... I can't remember. It's not as much as this, is it?
It's not nearly as much. Not nearly.
Even the smaller range of 186 miles. I don't think it's that.
I don't think it's that far either.
But they are aiming particularly for a very similar market as the Dacia Spring. Is they're either looking for those almost like first car new, or they're calling it empty nesters, where the kids have already moved out.
Old people.
Well, they say here mainly in their 50s, so that's not old, Alan. Shush.
Older people. Older. I think that's a bit. I think that's. You can never market anything at people too young, but you can always market things at people too old. And
Yes.
I think that these would be a church and garden centre staple.
Yes, I think so.
People have traded in their i10 for one of these.
But it's great. We're getting another city car, A-segment sized electric vehicle that is not £30,000 plus.
Yeah, we were really worried about what was happening in the A segment. It just seemed to have died. Just everything had been pulled.
Because it's so very difficult.
Yeah.
Thanks to legislation.
These are always far cleverer cars, and you'll find the supercar market just generally smarter, cleverer. They have to be built better, all these kind of things. These are the hardest cars to engineer.
Yep.
These little things. I think it looks interesting.
Right, I'm going to move on quickly at that point.
From the sublime to the ridiculous.
We're going to talk about, well, I don't know, I think if they can match the previous one, then it would be quite sublime as well. But the Bentley Continental GT Speed has been revealed. This is the one we were talking about, the new engine hybrid powertrain a month or so ago. 782 horsepower with the 4-litre V8 plug-in hybrid, which will give 50 miles just on electric power alone.
That's quite impressive.
That is very impressive. And that is, I have to congratulate the EU on legislating the significant electric-only mileage for hybrids in. I think that was a good move of theirs, demanding that, which has forced the car companies to get clever and not just go, well, yeah, I could do about 5 miles, that's fine, or whatever they were doing originally. But it also goes to show how quickly the technology is developing. This is going to be heavier, funnily enough, because if you make something a hybrid, there is a battery, which makes things heavier.
But with a 50 miles, 50, if you're trying to carry something to however many tons, 2.5 tons for 50 miles, then that's quite a lot of battery.
Yep. It's going to be astonishingly quick. It's going to be obviously luxuriously wonderful on the inside. I hope to get near one at some point because I think they're cracking looking cars. I really like the design. I
really like it.
But the Continental GT Speed's price tag, so that's obviously the top of the range there, starts at just £236,600.
And you should expect to get it in the third quarter of 2024. Well, that's for the first completed cars. You'll probably be a little bit down the line.
Yeah.
But yeah, great looking thing. Awesome. Yep. Built in the UK. All sorts of good stuff there.
Excellent. Do you want to take us from one car that's put some weight onto another fast car that's put some weight on?
New BMW 5 Series pictures and specs have been released. It has put on the beef.
Oh, yeah. And didn't the internet go up and down about that? Did you see some of the almost memes where people were going, one of these weighs the same as?
Yeah, it's like 2 smarts and whatever else.
Yes.
It's got quite silly. I mean, I don't know what to say because I think we've basically covered the story. I mean, you're either going to like or dislike the looks of it. I think that the green it's available in is lovely, by the way, but I've said that before and got completely smashed by strangers on the internet for saying that I liked the colour of BMW M4. Because, of course, that means I really like the looks. We went through this about marketing-driven, BMW being marketing-driven, and that there do seem to be issues with the styling in the design department. When we talked about the X3 the other week, this is just as true, if not more so here. I'm sure it's going to be wonderful to drive. I'm sure that many people are going to buy them. I doubt people will notice the weight.
No. £111,000 starting price.
I think for the first time ever, I'm looking at an M5 and going, don't really want that.
Well, I'm looking on the Evo article, and when I get to the interior, and I've been in the...
But you don't have to have it...
interior.
But you don't have to have it all set in... You don't have to have it set up to look like a Conservative Party conference. You know, it doesn't all have to be red, white and blue.
It all feels a bit tacky, but like you say, you can spec it to not do that, and you can press buttons to make sure that it doesn't do that. But
I mean, I set the interior colour scheme for my dad's 5 Series when he got it, 6 years ago, and it's never been changed since.
Whilst it's going to be slightly slower because it's heavier and everything, it will still have the same top speed of 155, or, and this is the bit why possibly the weight is being added, the 189 mile per hour if you tick the optional M drivers package, which will have a bunch of stuff already fitted to the car that you just activate.
When you first buy that, does that not include some day's driver training or something?
Don't know. Should do. I hope so.
That used to be the case. I think it might have been an optional day's driver training, but it did include some track time and coaching as well. I hope it still does. It's otherwise...
It's huge. The car's huge as well. No, I'm not talking about the weight. I'm just talking dimensionally.
It is big.
It's large.
My father's the last generation 5 Series, not this latest one.
Mm-hmm.
And it is longer than his E38 7 Series was.
Yes. So the mobesity. We go back to the article before the break.
I was amazed that it didn't fit in the garage, whereas the 7 Series had fit in the same garage.
Right, I'm going to move us on, but I'm going to stick with Germany. Let's talk about the new Volkswagen Golf R. This is the 8.5, is it? They're calling it 8.5
yes,
update. Yes. This is before the 9, which is going to be all electric. Don't forget, Volkswagen are going back they're leaving the IDs and they're going back to...
Because there was always meant to be an ICE and hybrid platform and then a dedicated electric platform, and gradually the dedicated electric platform would take over from the ICE and hybrid platform. Not going so well.
The Golf R has been tweaked up, so the interior has been tweaked like the rest of the Golf range, so it's got all the stuff such as the illuminated controls on the screen that is attached to the dash now, and which seems to be mentioned everywhere if there is. Now it's backlit.
It was so frustrating without it. I mean, I had it in that ID3.
Well, it's always mentioned, and then it always sort of mentioned, and finally.
Yeah.
Volkswagen have listened. They have listened to the dog's abuse they've rightly got for that, to be fair, and they have fixed it. They've also tweaked things like on the steering wheel so that you don't accidentally put it in R mode when you're going around the car park and things now, which was apparently a problem. It's going to cost in excess of £40,000, and they do expect an estate to come along as well, which will just be a fraction more than the hatchback version. All the people who used to be photocopier salespeople will have whatever they're selling now.
Coming soon to a reasonably priced PCP near you. And then after that, it will be in an industrial estate near you.
Yeah. They've actually brought in, to be fair, they have brought in a new driving mode called Eco, which has allowed them to tweak the comfort and sport. So they're a bit, spicy is probably not the right word for comfort, but to give it a bit more dynamic immediacy when you're pressing pedals. But there's also a special mode at the top end, which is designed for the Nürburgring.
They've also enhanced the drift mode. The torque vectoring can make one tyre spin much more quickly than the other, so you can get bigger drifts from the drift modes. And I wonder which one is more likely to be used by the second and third owners than between the eco mode and the drift mode.
One of the things you can say about the Golf R is it's done the performance in a very much a Volkswagen of old way, where it's restrained looks. It hasn't gone for mad wings and stuff.
Until the second or third owners, yes.
Yeah, of course. But out of the factory, it's not quite, because we all know, but it's almost a bit wolf in sheep's clothing, which I don't mind, actually. Not every quick car needs to have every wing on it and splitters and all the rest of it.
I beg to differ. Other end of the market now.
Bad news.
Well, yes. Suzuki are going to streamline, in inverted commas, their new car range as the zero-emission vehicle mandate bites. According to Tim Rose and AM Online, they are going to cut 4 of their current vehicles. The Swift Sport, boo. The Ignis, boo.
Boo.
The Swace, which was the Corolla.
Yeah, was that not the Corolla?
That was Corolla, which was a hybrid as well. And the Jimny LCV, which is not a huge surprise that the Jimny's getting sliced. It was always going to happen.
On borrowed time, anyway.
It was. They're going to go by early 2025 or sooner if dealer stock depletes. It is going to bring in its first purely electric car next year, the EVX. It's a small E and a capital V and a capital X. And by 2030, it will have added another 4 EVs to its range. Right at the minute, the range is going to consist of the Swift Vitara Scross all-in hybrid and the Acros Fev, which is a RAV4 plug-in hybrid. Or the RAV4 Prime, as they call it over here.
Very obvious and expected knock-on effects from the mandate that we were talking about when we discussed Vauxhall Stellantis.
And our last story that circles back to things we've already talked about earlier in the show, Andrew.
Yes.
Tell us about the wonderful software of the Volvo EX30.
Volvo has had a really rough time with the EX30. They have refunded owners over the software issues where some of them have just had enough and returned the car. I know this because I know a local owner and have discussed it with them. They have had many problems with the cars, lots of little niggly things which overall just affect the ownership and usage of your car. In this Autocar article, it goes on to talk about things that have gone wrong from the main screen that we talked about, the recall last week, going black. Steering wheel buttons have not responded, the car's not charging, emergency braking systems randomly activating. I don't think that's just a Volvo issue.
No,
I can talk about virtually any car that I've loaned that does that.
You seem uniquely able to activate those things.
I am happily offering my consultancy and time to help any car company reprogram and get their cars to do this properly.
With the exception of Honda, I do not understand how you manage to do it quite so consistently.
No, I need to take you down that bit of road actually to show you it when you come back to Blighty. The EX30 is going to have an update for a 2025 model, which is due on the 8th of July this year, which means that they have taken it off its UK online configurator at the moment, but it is not to say that it isn't still for sale. Volvo have admitted there's been lots of problems. This is not what people expect from a Volvo. It's not good enough, and they are trying desperately to fix this.
This is the kind of thing that's awfully tough for people on the ground, by the way. It's worth saying. People from the car companies on the ground to have to stand there in front of customers and go, yeah, I really do feel for them and the sort of company representatives in the UK and around the world, because software's ruddy hard.
Yeah.
Points of interest.
Points of interest. Yay.
Yay.
Finally. Well, but it's not going to be yay.
It's not going to be yay, because independently of the rest of the show run-up, I was sitting on Saturday morning. I was kind of slugging on Saturday morning, and I watched quite a lot of vaguely educational, I suppose, YouTube. And I was watching, it's a Wendover video, and it's called How Big Tech Ruined Farming. And I don't think that's 100% really the video. I think that what says in the thumbnail the thumbnail picture of the rise of high-tech farming, I think is far more accurate to what's actually in the video.
Yeah.
And it's all about John Deere. Now, we've talked about John Deere quite a lot on the show over the years, right to repair being one of the major reasons for it. But what's interesting here is how John Deere have managed to do what I think a lot of the car companies want to do.
They're trying.
And to make that transition from being a maker of plows way back, a maker of just vehicles subsequently, into manufacturers and service providers of an entire ecosystem that works together.
Or traps them in.
Or traps them in. Well, I was about to say, which, you know, depending on where you're looking from, is either really good or, oh my goodness. Because no other agricultural supplier has managed this to the scale that John Deere has. John Deere operates satellites. That was one of the big takeaways from this for me.
This video is the epitome of the problem I have with this technology. The technology itself is brilliant.
Yeah.
What they've developed is amazing, and what it can do is stunning. And what it can do for the world and society is stunning.
Yeah.
It has been wrapped up and controlled by people who are obviously
by an
looking
American
to get a return on this.
An American corporation,
Yeah.
Andrew. That's what it sums up as.
You get so much of the negative side of these things, which is I didn't realize the subscription was per acre
Yeah.
for their system, which is astonishing.
No, it's not astonishing though. Sorry, that does not surprise me. There are competitors in the space I work in on a day-by-day which sell you licenses based on the number of applications that you are trying to manage with their software. Yeah?
Okay.
It's licensed per application you have held in the tool. Which is just mad as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I'm not pretending that my employer's licensing model is clear and concise or anything, but it's not as evil as that. It doesn't surprise me that it was per acre. It got to the per acre. I laughed out loud when I heard that it was licensed per acre, because I was just like, yeah, that makes perfect sense. That's so evil.
Don't get me wrong, it's perfect sense.
It's
but
so evil, but then it's that just didn't surprise me in the way that it surprised you.
Because it showed the dominance of their position. Well, you're either doing it this way or take the losses.
The flip side is, of course, that means that if you're using it for big areas, then you pay more. And if you're only little, then you pay less. And you know, in that sense, it's quite fair, sort of. But no licensing model is ever fair. That's how it is. But really good. It's 25 minutes of your time.
Yeah.
Watch it. It's really interesting, if only for the history bit. And then draw your own conclusions, because they force a bit of a conclusion on you, but it's not overly, it's a Wendover one. So there's a bit of a conclusion in there, but ultimately you can make up your own mind because it's relatively balanced.
I'm going to take us to the list of the week, and Autocar has just yesterday produced another slideshow, and this time it's based on the best-selling cars in the world.
Yeah, in the world for 2023.
Yes. Alan, there are
30.
31 slides.
There are 30 cars here. It's very difficult, actually. I'm not going to go through them all because, you've got next week for that. The thing is, there weren't many that surprised me in this, partly because I move around a bit.
There was a couple. There was a couple of Japanese ones that I was surprised were so high, but I'm not going to say because I don't want to spoil the list.
Well, that is the trouble, isn't it, really? There's a few that you would just go, yeah, what? And then you realise, what actually amused me in this list was the number that are sold in North America and third world countries. So the Nissan Sentra and Selfie being an example of that.
But also the Chinese models, the China market making a big impact on this list.
Yeah, but it's not just...
That was interesting.
They're sold in other markets outside of China too. They're just not sold in Europe or North America.
Yeah, but that's what I was meaning.
But, even number 9 on the list. So I've got the Nissan Sentra and Selfie here because it's the one that I was picking on a second or so ago. Over 500,000 of them sold around the world in 1 year. It's a lot of cars, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's dropped 2 places as well. It's down 6% in numbers. I am told in the background that a lot of effort has gone into compiling this list. Please support.
Well, it's working perfectly for me.
And it works impeccably on iPad, on Firefox. For those of you who also tell me these things in the background, it is working perfectly.
Thank you
very
much
so
for
much.
all your hard work. I know we have moaned and bitched a lot.
I have. Yes, I have.
Over the years.
Yes, and it's great that it's now working. It does make it very pleasant to click through. Have a look at the list. It deserves clicks. This isn't just a cheesy listicle with them sort of plucked by the authors.
No.
Peccadillos. This is proper collated
facts.
numbers. So do spend some time with this one. Please, I would talk about it more. We've waffled a lot this week.
Yep. Okay, on that point then, as we've talked so much, you must be a bit thirsty now. Do you want to take us to the and finally?
Yes, and finally this week, you'll never guess which new car has a whopping 4 cup holders per person. The Autopian, Matt Hardegree, counting cup holders. In this instance, if you have a 2-seat Mercedes-Benz Sprinter, then you have many, many cup holders. But what I like about this article, by the way, is it goes in and it talks about the Subaru Ascent as well, which is a North American market Subaru with ridiculous numbers of cup holders. But it also splits the difference between a cup holder and a beverage holder as well. It gets quite technical in a sort of super nerdy or Autopian way.
Yes.
The difference between a beverage holder and a cup holder, and if something lies at an angle, then it's a beverage holder. Whereas if it keeps it upright, it's a cup holder, which was a distinction I'd never made before. But now I feel the desire to have a read. I think that you can probably in Euro market ones, then your numbers of cup holders may vary depending on how the bottom half of the dashboard is specified and the number of seats there are. Vans here are more likely to just have 2 front seats and not the sort of 1+2 setup, which you tend to find in Europe. But if you've seen a few American workmen, you will understand why that is the case. Is that just about everything, Andrew?
Yeah, I think we've finally come to the end.
Yes, I'm sorry. It's been very grumpy today. I've just checked how many calls and meetings I have today, and thankfully it's not very many, so you have received the brunt of my grumpiness today, for people. Anyway, don't forget to now next week you can give us any feedback, share your thoughts on the show at Motoring Podcast on Twitter and Instagram, on Facebook, and on the contact page of motoringpodcast.com, the hub of all our activities. Remember, you can support us financially via Patreon. Please leave a review and rating on Apple Podcasts or however your podcast app lets you do such a thing. Andrew, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Best way to get in touch with me is if you search for Crack Windscreen on Twitter or Mastodon, you'll find me there, and I'm also on LinkedIn under my name. Alan, if people would like to get in touch with you personally and say, don't worry, you didn't sound that grumpy to us, what's the best way for them to do that?
Best way is to probably use Twitter, or indeed any of these social media platforms used by the over 35s, where on all of those I am at AJP Bradley. That's Bradley. We'll be back very soon, but until then, I've been Alan Bradley.
I've been Andrew Clues.
And safe motoring.